Well, at this point, we've loaded all the clips from our timeline into our viewer and did an initial adjustment, making sure that nothing peaked above -12 and maybe -10 dB, and also making sure that our ambience was low enough. Let's go ahead and play it and see how it sounds, and then we're going to go forward and clean it up a little bit more. My music level sounds good. The narrator should come in.
The most unforgiving place.
He's a little easier to hear, but I'm still going to probably want to duck the music under so he's going to be a lot clearer, so I can actually hear him above the music.
It's the Sahara Desert.
Let me go ahead and pause this. Now, something you may have noticed is that even though I've mixed my levels to peak at -12, if you've been watching the meters, occasionally it might be hitting -10 or -9. And this is an important concept to walk away with when dealing with audio. If you mix all of your audio individually to -12 dB, but play them simultaneously across multiple tracks, the sum total of all your audio is actually louder than each individual tracks. The key here is audio is additive. So as you add more tracks, even if they're all mixed to -12 dB, it's going to get louder and louder in the total mix. Something to keep in mind as you watch your levels. Now getting back to doing our mix. When you mix audio, it's important for you to use your meters, but it's also important for you to use your ears. You are the best judge if the music is too loud or too soft, and if your ambience is too loud and too soft. I once worked with a producer that said, always have music -20 dB compared to our audio. And that was a completely wrong way of looking at sound. Depending on the frequency of the music, if it's higher frequency, it's going to punch through more, and if it's lower frequency, it's going to kind of get buried in the mix. And your narrator's voice and those folks who are being interviewed, depending on if they're a very strong voice or a very light voice, will determine how loud or how soft you need to make your music. Another thing to keep in mind is don't get really great speakers and don't get really poor speakers. You want to get a middle-of-the-road set of speakers because you want to hear how it's going to sound in your viewer's environment. If your viewer is going to be listening to it on a computer, you're going to mix it one way. If they're going to be watching it in a home theater, another. And in a real theater, you might want to mix it a little bit differently. Now, before we can start mixing in the timeline, we need to turn on one more overlay. If you go to the lower left-hand corner of your timeline, you'll see something that looks a little bit like a mountain range. This is the Toggle Clips Overlays button, and you can also get to this by simply pressing Option W. Now, when you click on this button, you'll notice there's a red bar in the middle of all of our audio clips. This red bar is very much like the red bar that you saw in the viewer window. As a matter of fact, it's a direct reflection of that. And if I adjusted this in the timeline, you would see it adjust in the viewer. It's kind of like a three-way light switch. I can flick it on one end of the hall and turn it off at the other end of the hall. As a matter of fact, let's take a look at this in practice. I'm going to double-click on our first clip in the timeline, our first audio file, and load it into the viewer. If I go ahead and I move this from -10 to say -20, take a look at what happens in my timeline. It goes lower. Let's go ahead and undo that because our levels were pretty good. The reason we want to have clip overlays turned on in our timeline, it allows us to adjust our audio in the timeline compared to the other clips. And what we're going to do here is something called keyframing. We're going to tell Final Cut when the audio should be louder and when the audio should be softer. And to do this, we need to add points to our timeline. Now, the way you can do this is you could go over to the tool palette and click on the pen tool, and then go over here to your timeline and click, and wherever you click, you're going to be putting in little keyframe points that you can make your volume louder or softer. We'll explore that more in just a moment. The problem with doing this is if you forget to switch back to your selection tool, every time you would click on the timeline, you're going to create all these little dots that you don't want. Let me go ahead and remove the keyframes that I put in my timeline, and I'm going to show you another very useful technique. If you've modified your audio and you don't like what you've done, and as you notice, this is the three-way light switch. The dots I put down here are reflected up here. But I want to reset all of this. And there's a reset button in Final Cut Pro. As a matter of fact, anytime you see a red X, whether it's here in the viewer, in the motion tab, or transition tab, or filter tabs, which we're going to learn about shortly, you can reset it back to its default settings. Simply click on the reset button and you're good to go. Now, what else happened here? Well, I noticed that I did reset my keyframes, but I also reset my levels. So let's go ahead and pull it down to where it was, which was about -10. Before we worked with the slider, here I'm going to use numerical entry to get us back to where we were. -10, hit return, and now my level is perfect. Now I promised to show you a trick that you can use so you didn't have to select the pen tool, and here it is. I'm going to go ahead and make my track height a little bit larger so you can see what I'm doing. We learned this earlier, and the keyboard shortcut for that is Shift-T to cycle between the different track heights. I'm going to just click it twice. So let's make this window active. We click on the timeline, Shift-T, and Shift-T again. Now we have a really big waveform that we can work with. And I want to put my keyframes in. To put my keyframes in, I simply hold down the Option key, and now when my mouse hovers over that little green line, I can put a keyframe in. So I want to bring the music down right where the narrator starts talking, and I can see that visually now with my waveforms. So I'm going to hold down the Option key, put one keyframe in, and put a second keyframe in. You always need two keyframes if you want to break a line. And now I can simply bring the music down a little bit and make it softer when the narrator starts talking. Let's take a listen and see how it sounds.
It's the most unforgiving place on earth.
Well, I definitely brought the music under, but I probably brought it a little too far under, and I really can't hear it. So let's go ahead and we can slowly bring it up.
It's the Sahara Desert.
And that's really what audio mixing is all about. It's tweaking your audio and listening to it over and over again till the mix sounds just right to you. So once I get this audio to the level I like, I may want to bring my audio levels up when the narrator pauses from speaking. I'm going to hold down my Option key, click here to put in one keyframe, a second keyframe, and I'm going to actually add a third and a fourth because now I can grab the middle section and bring the audio levels up while he takes a breath. Let's go ahead and play that back.
A vast wilderness. It's the Sahara Desert. With people and cultures as unpredictable as the landscape.
Well, there you go. That's the basic concept of keyframing audio. And now I'm going to go through my entire timeline and bring the music down when my talent speaks. And I'm also going to work with my ambience track because I want to hear how that ambient sound sounds in relationship to the music and the narrator. I'm going to hit Shift-T a couple of times to get my track height back to the default settings, and I'm going to start mixing my audio.